Ancient Egyptian civilization mysteriously collapsed at least 3 separate times throughout its long history, a phenomenon often linked to climate shifts and internal strife rather than external conquest. The last embers of a distant sunset warmed the Nile's smooth surface. A faint, sweet scent of night-blooming jasmine drifted across the riverbanks. The air grew still, a deep hush settling over the ancient land as stars began to pierce the darkening sky. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more peaceful historical narratives. It helps us immensely. The profound stillness of this particular night in the 18th dynasty felt different. A gentle, unseen current flowed through the capital city of Waset, later known as Thebes. The massive pylons of Karnak Temple cast long, silent shadows. Under the burgeoning moonlight, the temple's axis aligned precisely with the winter solstice sunset, a feat of ancient engineering and astronomical observation. The air, still warm from the desert day, held a promise of cool relief as the lunar disk climbed higher. The great hypostyle hull, a forest of 134 colossal columns, stood like silent sentinels, its carved hieroglyphs whispering secrets only the wind understood. Each column base measured about 3.3 meters in diameter. The taller central columns reached a height of 21 meters, supporting a now vanished clear-story roof that once allowed light to flood the sacred space. Along the riverbank, the day's frantic rhythm had softened into a gentle murmur. Fishermen, their nets empty for the night, secured their papyrus skiffs to mooring posts. Their wives prepared simple evening meals over small, flickering clay braziers. The staple diet of ancient Egyptians consisted largely of bread and beer. Bread was typically made from emmer wheat. Beer was a thick, nutritious beverage, often consumed by all ages. Children, tired from playing in the cooling sand, nestled close to their mothers. Their hushed voices mingled with the distant croaking of frogs from the marshlands. The Nile River itself was the lifeblood of Egypt, its annual inundation depositing fertile black silt, critical for agriculture. This inundation cycle was so vital that the Egyptian calendar was divided into 3 seasons: Akhet, inundation; Pare, growth; and Shimu, harvest. Within the sprawling palace complex, the glow of oil lamps began to illuminate the inner chambers. These lamps, typically made of clay, burned wicks soaked in castor oil or animal fat. The corridors, normally bustling with courtiers and servants, now carried only the soft shuffle of sandals on polished stone. The palace, a vast network of courtyards, residential quarters, and administrative offices, reflected the structured hierarchy of the kingdom. The royal residence was often situated near the administrative heart of the capital. Palace walls were frequently adorned with vibrant frescoes depicting scenes of daily life, nature, and religious rituals. Pigments were often derived from natural minerals, such as red from iron oxides and blue from ground lapis lazuli, or Egyptian blue, a synthetic pigment invented by the Egyptians. In a dimly lit scriptorium, a lone scribe named Hori dipped his red pen into a small ink. His meticulous hieratic script flowed across a fresh sheet of papyrus. Papyrus, made from the pith of the papyrus plant, was the primary writing material in ancient Egypt. The plant grew abundantly along the Nile. Hori was transcribing a medical text, a collection of remedies and observations passed down through generations. Ancient Egyptian medicine was remarkably advanced for its time, incorporating elements of magic and empirical observation. The Ebers Papyrus, dating to around 1550 BCE, contains over 700 magical formulas and remedies for various ailments. The scent of ink and aged papyrus hung heavy in the air. The tiny flame of his lamp cast dancing shadows on the wall, creating a sense of quiet mystery. Scribes held an elevated position in society, requiring years of rigorous training. They were exempt from manual labor and taxation. Their writing tools included red pens, a wooden palette for holding cakes of black and red ink, and a water pot. Far from Hori's quiet work, deep within the temple precincts, priests moved with hushed reverence. Their linen robes rustled softly, a whisper against the cool stone. They were performing the final nightly rituals, tending to the cult statues of the gods. Each temple was considered the house of a god. The priests were responsible for daily offerings of food, drink, and incense. These offerings were believed to sustain the gods, ensuring the cosmic balance of met. The scent of frankincense and myrrh drifted from the inner sanctum. Incense was burned to purify the air and to carry prayers to the deities. Many Egyptian temples were oriented astronomically, aligning with solstices or the sound of distant chanting, a low, rhythmic drone, carried on the gentle breeze. This was the call to the gods, a timeless plea for protection and prosperity. In his private chambers, the pharaoh Amenhotep III sat in quiet contemplation. His regal posture remained, even in solitude. The weight of his golden headdress and ceremonial regalia was replaced by the simple linen of his night attire. He ruled during a period of unprecedented prosperity and artistic achievement. His reign, from approximately 1390 to 1353 BCE, was one of the most stable in Egyptian history. The room was sparsely lit by tall, slender oil lamps, their flames casting a warm, golden glow on the painted walls. Hieroglyphs depicting his triumphs and divine connections covered the surfaces. The pharaoh was considered a living god, the son of Ra and the earthly manifestation of Horus. He pondered the subtle shifts he felt within his kingdom, a quiet disquiet beneath the veneer of opulence. The vast wealth generated during his reign was partly due to successful trade expeditions and tribute from conquered territories. He had commissioned monumental building projects across Egypt, including the Colossi of Memnon, and extensive additions to the Luxor Temple. Across the city, in a modest mud-brick dwelling, a mother named Nefret soothed her child. The baby, restless from a slight fever, whimpered softly. Nefret hummed a lullaby, a melody passed down through generations. Mud-brick was the most common building material for homes in ancient Egypt. Its insulating properties helped keep homes cool in summer and warm in winter. She stroked the child's forehead, feeling the lingering warmth of the day. The small room was illuminated by a single, sputtering lamp. A simple reed mat served as a bed for her and her husband. The scent of fresh linen, dried under the hot sun, filled the air. Families were often large, reflecting high birth rates and infant mortality. Children were cherished and played an important role in household chores and agricultural tasks from a young age. Artisans in the royal workshops had largely ceased their labor. The intricate work of carving limestone and painting frescoes required sharp light. However, a few dedicated sculptors remained, refining their creations under the soft lamplight. Their chisels tapped rhythmically against stone, a whisper of sound in the quiet night. The craft of sculpture was highly specialized, passed down from father to son. Limestone was a readily available material in Egypt. They were shaping a small effigy of the goddess Hathor, patroness of joy, love, and motherhood. This was a private commission, destined for a noble's tomb. The careful detailing of her cow ears and solar disk took immense patience. Egyptian artisans achieved incredible precision using rudimentary tools like copper chisels and stone grinders. The workshop, usually a hive of activity, now felt like a sanctuary of creation. High above the city, on a secluded rooftop terrace, a group of astrologers gazed at the velvet sky. The desert air was remarkably clear, offering an unobstructed view of countless stars. Ancient Egyptians tracked celestial bodies with remarkable accuracy. They used the Heliacal rising of Sirius, the brightest star, to predict the annual flooding of the Nile. This astronomical event occurred around the summer solstice. They observed planetary movements and constellations, associating them with deities and predicting future events. Their understanding of the cosmos was deeply intertwined with their religious beliefs. The priests of Ra, the sun god, were particularly adept at celestial observation. They believed that the movements of the stars influenced human destiny and the fate of the kingdom. One astrologer, an elder named Kansu, traced the path of a faint comet across the celestial sphere. Comets were often interpreted as omens, harbingers of change or upheaval. He recorded its trajectory on a waxed tablet, his brow furrowed in concentration. The precise observation of astronomical phenomena was crucial for their calendar system. The Egyptian calendar had 365 days, divided into 12 months of 30 days each, plus 5 epigomenal days. Back in the temple courtyards, the last wisps of incense drifted on the night air. The sacred precincts, usually bustling with pilgrims during the day, were now empty. The towering obelisks, carved from single blocks of red granite, pointed silently towards the heavens. Obelisks were erected in pairs at temple entrances, symbolizing the sun god Ra. Their tips were sometimes capped with electrum, an alloy of gold and silver, to reflect the sun's rays. The polished paving stones, still warm from the day's sun, absorbed the cool night air. The hieroglyphs carved into the temple walls seemed to glow faintly under the moonlight. These inscriptions documented Pharaoh's accomplishments, hymns to the gods, and ritual texts. The silence of the courtyard was profound, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant howl of a jackal. It was a space where the divine and earthly realms seemed to merge. A quiet message, or perhaps a premonition, stirred within the hearts of many that night. It was not a spoken word, but a collective intuition. The air itself seemed to hum with an unspoken understanding. The silent night was weaving a new tapestry for the dawn. Pharaoh Amenhotep III, in his quiet chamber, had experienced a vivid dream. He saw the great river Nile, not in its usual powerful flow, but subtly shifting course, creating new islands of fertile land. This dream was unusual. Dreams were considered significant in ancient Egypt, often interpreted as messages from the gods. Professional dream interpreters existed in temples. The changing course of the Nile in his vision symbolized a profound alteration in the kingdom's destiny. The astrologer Khonsu had observed a subtle alignment of 3 specific stars, one rarely seen. This celestial configuration had been documented in ancient texts as a sign of an impending shift in the cosmic order. It was not a destructive omen, but one indicating a new path. He remembered a prophecy that spoke of a king who would redefine the relationship between man and God. The scribe Hori, while meticulously copying the medical text, had stumbled upon a forgotten passage. It described a silent shift in the land, a time when old ways would gently recede, making space for a new vision. The passage spoke of a pharaoh who would listen to the silent whisper of the cosmos. This text was part of the library of the House of Life, an institution associated with temples where scribes, priests, and scholars worked. The mother Nefrit, finally holding her sleeping child, felt a strange lightness in her heart. Her baby's fever had broken. She interpreted this small miracle as a sign of hope, a gentle promise of better days. The quiet joy she felt was profound. This personal experience connected her to the larger, unspoken hope spreading through the city. Ancient Egyptians believed in a strong connection between personal well-being and divine favor. The artisans, completing their Hathor effigy, noticed a peculiar luminescence radiating from the statue's eyes under the lamplight. It was a fleeting, soft glow, but undeniably present. They exchanged knowing glances, a shared understanding passing between them. The priests, after their final prayers, felt a renewed sense of purpose. The ancient rituals, though unchanged for centuries, seemed to carry a new weight of meaning. They felt the presence of the gods more acutely than usual, a subtle affirmation. They knew dawn would bring a new energy to their duties. The sacred texts held many layers of meaning. The temple complex itself, with its vast courtyards and sanctuaries, served as a conduit between the earthly and divine realms. The carefully aligned structures of the temple complexes reflected the cosmic order, mirroring the movements of the sun and stars. Throughout the night, the profound quiet of ancient Egypt deepened, creating a canvas upon which subtle changes could emerge. The cool breeze from the Nile carried the scent of wet earth and distant lotus blossoms. These flowers were sacred, symbolizing creation and rebirth. The city, usually restless, even in sleep, seemed to breathe in unison, a silent anticipation. The very stones of the temples and palaces absorbed the moonlight, holding its ethereal glow. The ancient Egyptians held a deep reverence for the moon, seeing it as a counterpart to the sun, associated with the god Thoth. Thoth was the god of writing, magic, wisdom, and the moon. Pharaoh Amenhotep the third rose from his contemplation. His dream of the Nile's changing course resonated deeply within him. He understood it not as a threat, but as an invitation. A new direction for his kingdom was quietly revealing itself. He realized that the immense wealth and power accumulated under his reign also carried the responsibility for subtle societal shifts. The concept of Mohat, cosmic balance, and justice was central to his rule. He knew the kingdom's prosperity was intertwined with the well-being of all its people. He walked to the vast balcony overlooking the sleeping city. The moonlight bathed everything in a silver hue. The distant pyramids, monumental tombs of his ancestors, stood as eternal guardians against the horizon. The pyramids were constructed during the Old and Middle Kingdoms, many centuries before his time. The astrologer Khonsu and his colleagues debated the implications of the rare star alignment. One younger apprentice suggested it foretold a pharaoh who would emphasize internal spiritual development over external conquests. This idea was a radical departure from traditional pharaonic ambitions, focused on military expansion and territorial control. Khonsu, though old, felt a stirring of new possibility. He remembered other prophecies that spoke of a time of quiet revelation, a period when wisdom would flow not from battlefields, but from inner reflection. They continued to chart the stars, meticulously recording every minute change. Their observations were crucial for maintaining the accuracy of the Egyptian calendar. Scribe Hori, completing his work, carefully rolled the papyrus scroll. The passage he had discovered spoke of listening to the subtle energies of the land. He felt a deep sense of peace, a quiet conviction that his work, though seemingly mundane, contributed to the broader tapestry of the kingdom. He extinguished his lamp, plunging his small room into darkness, illuminated only by the faint moonlight filtering through the window. Scribes were not just copiers, they were also administrators, record keepers, and scholars. Their role was foundational to the functioning of the centralized Egyptian state. The mother Nefret, watching her child sleep soundly, made a silent vow. She would teach her child to respect the silent wisdom of the land, to understand the subtle shifts in the river and the patterns of the stars. Her personal experience of comfort and hope felt like a microcosm of a larger societal promise. The familial unit was considered sacred in ancient Egyptian society. Raising children to respect traditions and contribute to society was paramount. Artisans, their Hathor statue now completed, felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The goddess's eyes, even in the dim light, seemed to hold a benevolent gaze. They covered the statue with a linen cloth, awaiting the dawn. They knew their work was not just craft. It was an act of devotion, creating a vessel for the divine. Their skills were highly valued, and their creations adorned temples and tombs throughout the land. The intricate details often carried symbolic meanings, reinforcing religious and cultural beliefs. The priests, after their final consultations, dispersed to their individual cells within the temple complex. Each carried a quiet understanding that the spiritual currents of the kingdom were shifting. They felt a profound responsibility to guide their people through this subtle transformation. The hierarchy of the priesthood was complex, with various ranks and specialized roles. They were keepers of sacred knowledge and intermediaries between mortals and gods. The temple grounds themselves were designed to evoke a sense of the primordial mound of creation, a sacred space where the world began. The last hours of the night slipped by in utter tranquility. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of the desert. The vastness of the cosmos felt closer, more intimately connected to the earth. The celestial phenomena observed by the ancient Egyptians were deeply integrated into their religious worldview. The rising and setting of the sun, moon, and stars were interpreted as manifestations of divine power and the eternal cycle of creation and rebirth. The concept of Jed, stability, was paramount. As the first faint streaks of pre-dawn light began to paint the eastern sky, a new energy stirred. It was not a sudden awakening, but a slow, gentle unfolding. The silent night had done its work. The moon, now a pale crescent, began its descent, yielding to the rising sun. The Egyptians believed the sun god Ra traversed the heavens in his solar bark, bringing light and life to the world. Each day was a triumph over the forces of chaos. Pharaoh Amenhotep III stood resolute on his balcony, watching the dawn break. His dream had solidified into a clear conviction. He would focus on consolidating internal prosperity and fostering a deeper spiritual connection within his kingdom. He would initiate policies that encouraged artistic expression and intellectual pursuits, moving away from aggressive military expansion. This shift would mark a turning point, steering his powerful empire towards an era of profound cultural and spiritual introspection. His reign, already considered golden, would now be defined by a new emphasis on internal harmony and a refined sense of The astrologer Kansu and his students began to prepare for the day's tasks. Their charts carefully updated, the rare stellar alignment continued to hold significance. Kansu decided to present his findings to the Pharaoh, believing they would resonate with the king's own reflections. He understood that these celestial signs often mirrored earthly events, guiding rulers towards their destiny. The precise measurement of time and the prediction of celestial events were crucial for the state religion and for agriculture. Scribe Hori, refreshed from a peaceful night, prepared for a new day of work. He would begin transcribing a collection of wisdom texts, a departure from the medical scrolls. He felt drawn to passages that emphasized inner peace and ethical conduct. His hands, usually focused on factual records, now yearned to capture the essence of philosophical thought. The collection of wisdom texts, known as Sabate, offered moral and ethical guidance for living a righteous life. They were integral to the education of young scribes. Nefret, her child now fully recovered, embraced the morning light. She felt a profound sense of gratitude and hope for her family's future. The quiet night had brought her a personal revelation, a renewed faith in the gentle unfolding of life. She began preparing the morning bread, her movements calm and deliberate. The family's daily routine was intertwined with the natural rhythms of the Nile and the sun. The artisans uncovered the Hathor statue, its benevolent gaze now illuminated by the rising sun. The golden light caught the delicate details of the carving, bringing the goddess to life. They felt a shared sense of wonder and reverence, knowing that creation would now serve its purpose, bringing beauty and comfort. The workshops would soon fill with the sounds of their renewed efforts, but with a different kind of purpose. The creation of sacred art was considered a religious act. The priests gathered for the morning rituals, their voices carrying the ancient hymns across the waking city. Their chants felt more resonant, imbued with a fresh understanding of their sacred duties. They knew the kingdom was at a cusp, moving towards a period of profound spiritual reawakening, guided by the silent wisdom of the previous night. The morning rituals were essential for renewing the cosmic order. They invoked the blessings of the gods upon the land and its people. The entire kingdom of ancient Egypt stirred, not with dramatic fanfare, but with a quiet, collective understanding. The silent night had indeed changed everything. It had reshaped the very fabric of leadership, inspiring a pharaoh to guide his people towards a new, internally focused prosperity. It had infused ordinary lives with renewed hope and purpose. It had set a trajectory that would define an era, an empire, and its legacy, all stemming from a single, profoundly tranquil night. The shift was subtle, a redirection of focus from external conquest to internal, spiritual, and cultural flourishing. This redirection would set the stage for a period of remarkable innovation and deep introspection. Pharaoh Amenhotep III summoned his royal advisors to the palace's grand audience chamber. Sunlight streamed through high windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The chamber was adorned with intricate carvings, depicting the gods and pharaohs. These carvings served as both decoration and didactic texts, reinforcing royal ideology. He announced his new vision with a quiet authority. His words were measured, carrying the weight of his divine mandate. He spoke of enhancing the quality of life for all Egyptians. He emphasized the importance of Mat in every aspect of governance. He proposed massive investment in public works and infrastructure projects. These projects would improve irrigation systems and expand agricultural output. He envisioned a kingdom known for its wisdom and artistry, not just its military might. His advisors, initially surprised, listened intently. The traditional role of a pharaoh often involved leading military campaigns. The concept of a ruler focusing so intensely on internal welfare was a significant departure. Some elder statesmen exchanged wary glances. They were accustomed to the established order. Younger courtiers, however, felt a stirring of excitement. This new path offered opportunities for different kinds of glory. The pharaoh commanded them to draft new decrees immediately. These decrees would outline the shift in national priorities. He instructed them to gather the kingdom's foremost engineers and architects. They would plan extensive new construction projects. He also called for the chief priests to interpret his dream more broadly. This interpretation would serve as a public endorsement of his vision. The astrologer Kansu, accompanied by his most promising apprentice, presented his findings to the Pharaoh. He explained the rare stellar alignment. He described its ancient interpretation, linking it to a period of inner transformation. The Pharaoh listened intently, a knowing look in his eyes. Khonsu spoke of the comet's trajectory, further confirming the celestial omens. Comets were often viewed with a mixture of awe and apprehension. He highlighted prophecies of a king who would prioritize spiritual enlightenment. This enlightenment would flow from within the kingdom's borders. Amenhotep III acknowledged Khonsu's detailed report. He saw it as divine validation for his own premonitions. He instructed Khonsu to continue monitoring the heavens vigilantly. He asked him to provide daily reports on celestial events. The Pharaoh also commissioned Khonsu to establish a new astronomical observatory. This observatory would be open to scholars from across the kingdom. This would foster a greater understanding of the cosmos among the populace. The observatory would be built on high ground, offering an unobstructed view of the night sky. Scribe Ore began his work on the wisdom texts with renewed zeal. He transcribed passages about integrity, compassion, and justice. The instructions of Tahutip, a famous wisdom text, provided moral guidance for officials and commoners alike. He felt a profound connection to the ancient authors. Their words resonated deeply with the Pharaoh's new direction. Hori understood that these texts were more than mere scrolls. They were blueprints for a virtuous society. He shared significant passages with his fellow scribes. They discussed the implications for their own lives and work. This sharing sparked lively intellectual debates within the scriptorium. They explored new interpretations of ancient philosophies. The House of Life became a hub of intellectual ferment. Scribes began to compile new collections of texts. These collections focused on ethics, philosophy, and internal governance. Hori felt a sense of purpose beyond simple transcription. He saw himself as a contributor to the kingdom's intellectual renaissance. He meticulously copied passages about the importance of listening. He emphasized the need for empathetic leadership. Nefret, her child now thriving, observed the subtle changes in her community. The men spoke of new opportunities for work on public building projects. These projects promised stable employment and better wages. She heard women discussing new trade routes, bringing exotic goods to the markets. Trade with Nubia, Syria, and the Aegean Islands brought prosperity. The daily life of ordinary Egyptians began to reflect the Pharaoh's new focus. There was a palpable sense of renewed optimism. Nefret found herself humming her lullabies with greater joy. She felt a profound connection to the collective hope. She taught her child about the importance of community. She spoke of contributing to the common good. Her small mud brick home, once a sanctuary from daily struggles, now felt like a part of something larger. She noticed more vibrant colors appearing in clothing and household items. The increased prosperity was evident in small ways. The artisans in the royal workshops bustled with fresh energy. They received new commissions, not just for tombs and temples, but for public spaces. The Pharaoh ordered the creation of intricate sculptures for new plazas and gardens. He requested frescoes depicting scenes of peace and prosperity. These works would adorn newly constructed administrative buildings. The artisans embraced the challenge with enthusiasm. Their skills were now being celebrated in new and visible ways. They meticulously carved and painted, their creations reflecting the new ethos. They used finer tools and more vibrant pigments. The quality of their work reached new heights. The workshops became centers of artistic innovation. New styles and techniques began to emerge. They trained more apprentices, passing on their specialized knowledge. This expansion of artistic production created more jobs. It fostered a vibrant artistic community. The priests, after their morning rituals, gathered in the temple courtyards. They discussed the Pharaoh's directives. They debated the theological implications of a shift away from conquest. The high priest, a venerable man named Ankhesenpotan, spoke with quiet authority. He explained that Mat encompassed peace and prosperity, not just military victories. He emphasized the spiritual well-being of the kingdom. He reminded them of ancient prophecies that spoke of a golden age of reflection. This age would be ushered in by a wise and benevolent ruler. The priests began to incorporate these themes into their sermons. They spoke of inner journeys and spiritual growth. The temples, while still centers of worship, also became centers for philosophical discourse. They fostered a deeper understanding of the god's will. New rituals were developed to celebrate agricultural abundance and peaceful trade. These rituals reinforced the pharaoh's vision. Throughout the kingdom, the impact of Amenhotep III's new direction became evident. The construction of new irrigation canals began in earnest. Thousands of laborers, previously engaged in military support or simple agriculture, found new employment. These canals expanded arable land. They ensured more consistent harvests. Agricultural yields increased dramatically, leading to a surplus of food. This surplus bolstered the kingdom's economy. It also provided food security for the growing population. New granaries were built across the land. They stored the abundant harvests. The wealth generated was reinvested into the kingdom. It funded further infrastructure and cultural projects. The pharaoh commissioned grand public buildings. These included libraries, schools for scribes, and communal baths. These buildings were adorned with beautiful artwork. They served as symbols of the kingdom's new prosperity. Trade routes flourished under the new policies. Diplomatic missions replaced military expeditions. Egyptian merchants traveled far and wide. They brought back exotic goods and new ideas. Contact with other civilizations led to cultural exchange. New artistic styles and technological innovations were adopted. The pharaoh actively encouraged these exchanges. He saw them as enriching the kingdom. The Mediterranean ports hummed with activity. Ships from distant lands docked regularly. They unloaded their precious cargo. Egyptian goods, known for their quality, were highly sought after. This peaceful trade further solidified Egypt's power and influence. It created alliances based on mutual prosperity. The average Egyptian citizen experienced a tangible improvement in their daily lives. The availability of food increased. Housing conditions improved for many. Access to education expanded beyond the priestly and scribal classes. Children from various social strata had opportunities to learn. They were taught to read and write. They studied mathematics and astronomy. This intellectual awakening fostered a new generation of thinkers. They contributed to the kingdom's progress. Healthcare also saw advancements. The medical texts transcribed by Hori were disseminated more widely. New hospitals were established in major cities. They provided care to the sick and injured. Ancient Egyptian doctors were skilled surgeons and herbalists. They treated a wide range of ailments. Amenhotep III, overseeing these changes, felt a profound sense of satisfaction. His reign, once marked by opulence, was now defined by a deeper purpose. He walked through the bustling markets, observing his people. He saw their smiles, their industry, their renewed hope. He knew that true power lay not in conquest, but in the well-being of his subjects. He often held public audiences. He listened to the concerns of common people. This fostered a strong bond between the ruler and the ruled. The concept of the Good Shepherd King became central to his image. He was seen as a protector and provider. His queen, Tai, played an increasingly important role. She supported his vision wholeheartedly. She was an intelligent and influential figure. She became a patron of the arts and education. She encouraged women to pursue scholarly and artistic endeavors. Her influence helped shape the cultural landscape of the era. She established schools specifically for noblewomen. These schools taught administration, literature, and diplomacy. Tai's strong presence demonstrated a new level of royal partnership. Her image was frequently depicted alongside the pharaohs. This was unusual for the time. The city of Waset, under the new directives, began to transform. New public gardens bloomed along the Nile. Their fragrant flowers attracted various birds and insects. Statues of gods and pharaohs adorned the streets. These statues were crafted with exquisite detail. Paved roads replaced dusty tracks. These roads facilitated easier movement of goods and people. The air, once heavy with the smell of work and sweat, now carried scents of jasmine and fresh bread. The expansion of the city reflected the kingdom's prosperity. New residential areas were planned and built. They offered better living conditions for many. The focus on internal spiritual development led to a flourishing of religious thought. Philosophers and theologians debated complex questions of existence. They explored the nature of the gods and the afterlife. New hymns and prayers were composed. They reflected a more personal relationship with the divine. The concept of the asterisk, ka-asterisk, life force, and asterisk by asterisk personality was explored more deeply. These elements were crucial for understanding the afterlife. Temples continued to be places of worship. They also became centers for intellectual discourse and spiritual retreats. Pilgrimages to sacred sites increased in popularity. People sought spiritual solace and wisdom. Art and architecture reached an unprecedented zenith. Sculptors created lifelike portraits. Their works captured the individuality of their subjects. Painters adorned tombs and temples with vibrant, dynamic scenes. These scenes depicted not just rituals, but also daily life and nature. Gold, silver, and precious stones were incorporated into intricate jewelry. These pieces showcased the artisan's mastery. Craftsmen produced exquisite furniture and ceramics. These items were both functional and beautiful. The artistic output of this period became known for its elegance and refinement. It blended traditional forms with innovative techniques. The shift was not without its challenges. Some traditionalists resisted the changes. They feared a weakening of military strength. They worried about the erosion of ancient customs. The pharaoh addressed these concerns with diplomacy and firm resolve. He reiterated his commitment to Maat. He explained that true strength came from within. He reminded them that a strong, united populace was the best defense. He emphasized that military prowess was still important. However, it would be used for defense, not aggressive expansion. He worked to integrate the old ways with the new vision. Te Militari, though no longer focused on conquest, remained a vital institution. Its role shifted to internal security and border defense. Soldiers were trained in engineering and construction. They contributed to the vast public works projects. The military transformed from an instrument of war into a force for stability and development. This provided new career paths for many soldiers. They learned valuable skills applicable to civilian life. The army also maintained peace in the various provinces. This ensured the smooth flow of trade and commerce. The judicial system was reformed to emphasize fairness and justice. Pharaoh Amenhotep III personally oversaw important legal cases. He ensured that Maat was upheld. New laws were enacted to protect the rights of common citizens. Bribery and corruption were severely punished. The legal system became more transparent and accessible. Professional judges and scribes administered justice. This fostered a greater sense of equity throughout the land. People felt that their concerns would be heard and addressed. The influence of the royal family extended beyond administrative and religious spheres. The pharaoh's children were educated in the new philosophy. They were groomed to continue this legacy of internal focus. Their tutors emphasized wisdom, compassion, and cultural patronage. The royal children traveled throughout the kingdom. They engaged with people from all walks of life. This provided them with a deep understanding of their future responsibilities. They learned about the daily lives of farmers, artisans, and merchants. The peaceful prosperity fostered by Amenhotep III had a ripple effect across the Near East. Other kingdoms, observing Egypt's success, began to rethink their own strategies. They saw the benefits of trade and diplomacy over constant warfare. Egypt became a model for stable and prosperous governance. Its cultural achievements were admired and emulated. This period marked a unique era of relative peace in a tumultuous region. Egyptian culture became a dominant force. The legacy of this silent shift would echo through the centuries. Future pharaohs would look back at Amenhotep III's reign. They would see it as a blueprint for enlightened leadership. The monuments and artworks of this period stood as testaments to his vision. The intellectual and spiritual awakening he fostered would lay groundwork for future innovations. His reign would be remembered not just for its wealth, but for its wisdom and humanity. The concept of a pharaoh as a benevolent leader, not just a warrior, became deeply embedded. The subtle current that Hori had sensed, the celestial alignment Khonsu had observed, the quiet hope Neferet had felt, and the creative surge among the artisans, all coalesced into a profound redirection. It was a testament to the power of a single night, a night where whispers of change could redefine the destiny of an entire civilization. The transition was gradual, organic, and deeply rooted in the collective consciousness of the Egyptian people. It was a change that honored the past while boldly embracing a new future. The city of Wasit continued to grow and prosper. Its temples shone brighter under the desert sun. Its markets bustled with renewed vigor. Its people walked with a spring in their step. The air was filled with the sounds of construction, not for fortifications, but for cultural centers. Chants from the temples were accompanied by the cheerful songs of workers. The rhythm of daily life reflected a newfound harmony. Beyond the immediate changes, the long-term impact was profound. The seeds of intellectual curiosity planted during this period blossomed into a rich tapestry of knowledge. Egyptian scholars delved deeper into mathematics, geometry, and medicine. Their understanding of the human body and the natural world expanded significantly. The School of Medicine at Sais, already renowned, saw an influx of students and new discoveries. They documented surgical procedures and developed new pharmaceutical remedies. The study of anatomy progressed through careful observation. Architectural innovations also flourished. New construction techniques allowed for larger and more complex structures. Architects experimented with different materials and designs. They created buildings that were not only grand, but also functionally efficient. The emphasis shifted from monumental, purely religious structures to public buildings designed for community use. These included assembly halls and communal granaries. The use of ramps and levers revolutionized heavy construction. The arts continued their golden age. Musicians composed new melodies and instruments. Poets penned verses celebrating nature, love, and the wisdom of the gods. Dancers choreographed elaborate performances for festivals and religious ceremonies. The vibrant cultural scene became a source of national pride. Festivals were celebrated with greater pomp and joy. The pharaoh frequently attended public performances, showing his support. Trade continued to expand, solidifying Egypt's economic dominance. New technologies from foreign lands, like advanced metalworking techniques, were integrated into Egyptian crafts. This exchange fostered a spirit of open-mindedness and innovation. Egyptian merchants became expert navigators, charting new sea routes. They established trading posts in distant lands. The prosperity flowed down to every level of society. Even the poorest households saw an improvement in their quality of life. Access to goods that were once considered luxuries became more common. The transformation also had a subtle effect on religious practices. While the traditional pantheon of gods remained central, there was a growing emphasis on individual piety. People felt a more personal connection to the deities. Offerings at household shrines became more frequent. Personal prayers for guidance and protection increased. This individualization of faith reflected a deeper spiritual engagement within the populace. The cult of the family gods became more prominent. The reign of Amenhotep III, spanning nearly 4 decades, became a benchmark. It was an era of peace, prosperity, and profound cultural blossoming. It showed that an empire could achieve greatness, not through subjugation, but through cultivation. It demonstrated that a pharaoh could be a philosopher king, guiding his people towards enlightenment. The foundations laid during this time would influence successive dynasties. They would shape the very identity of ancient Egypt. This was the Quiet Revolution. It was born from a single, tranquil night. It echoed in every stone, every scroll, every heart throughout the land. However, even as Amenhotep III's reign reached its zenith, the seeds of future upheaval were subtly being sown. The intense focus on the solar cult of Ra, already deeply embedded, would soon be challenged. This challenge would come from a very unexpected source. The pharaoh's own son and successor. The serene stability he had so carefully built would face an unprecedented ideological storm. A storm that would shake the very foundations of Egyptian religion and political power. The notion of a single, universal god, a concept radical to the polytheistic Egyptians, was slowly taking root in the mind of his heir. This shift would cause massive disruption. It would lead to one of the most controversial and enigmatic periods in ancient Egyptian history. The unparalleled prosperity of Amenhotep III's reign also inadvertently concentrated immense power in the hands of the pharaoh. This centralization made subsequent deviations from tradition more impactful. The priesthood, while initially supportive of the internal focus, grew wary of the pharaoh's increasing spiritual authority. They feared a challenge to their ancient rights and vast landhold. The wealth pouring into the temples under Amenhotep III was immense. This wealth gave the priesthood significant political clout. Timilitari, now repurposed for construction and defense, remained loyal to Amenhotep III. However, a prolonged period of peace could lull a kingdom into a false sense of security. External threats, though currently subdued, never truly vanished. The Hittite Empire in the north was growing stronger. Their expansionist ambitions would soon cast a long shadow over Egypt. The diplomatic alliances forged through trade were strong, but alliances could be fragile. The societal shifts under Amenhotep III created a more educated and introspective populace. This populace might be more receptive to new ideas. They might also be more questioning of established norms. This intellectual awakening, while largely positive, could also breed dissent. It could challenge traditional hierarchies. The quiet revelation of that tranquil night had opened doors. Some of these doors led to unforeseen paths. Amenhotep III, nearing the end of his long and illustrious reign, was largely unaware of the brewing storm. He saw only the fruits of his peaceful policies. He saw a kingdom thriving, culturally rich, and spiritually profound. His health, though robust for much of his life, began to wane. He suffered from dental problems and arthritis in his later years. The mummified remains of Amenhotep III show evidence of severe tooth decay and abscesses. These conditions would have caused him great pain. He increasingly relied on his trusted advisors and his powerful queen, Tai. He continued to oversee grand building projects, including his vast mortuary temple. The Colossi of Memnon were once part of this massive complex. The transition of power to his son, Amenhotep IV, was anticipated. It was expected to be smooth. The young prince had been raised in the lap of luxury. He was steeped in the new cultural and intellectual climate. He was educated by the finest scribes and priests. He was exposed to the vibrant artistic and philosophical currents of his father's reign. He was a keen observer of celestial phenomena. He possessed a deeply contemplative and philosophical mind. His early life was marked by an intense fascination with religious concepts. He was particularly drawn to the sun disk, Atna. The Otan, a manifestation of the sun god Ra, had always been part of the Egyptian pantheon. However, it was not usually the primary focus of worship. Amenhotep IV, from a young age, began to develop a singular devotion to Otan. He saw it not just as one god among many, but as the sole, supreme deity. This burgeoning monotheistic inclination was a radical departure. It flew in the face of millennia of polytheistic tradition. His devotion was not merely spiritual. It held profound political implications. He began to question the immense power of the Amen priesthood. Omen-Ra was the chief state god, particularly revered in Wasit. The Omen cult had accumulated vast wealth and influence. They controlled extensive land holdings and numerous temples. Their power rivaled that of the Pharaoh himself. Amenhotep IV's early years as co-regent with his aging father offered glimpses of his emerging beliefs. He commissioned art that depicted the Aten differently. The Aten was shown as a sun disk, with radiating rays ending in hands. These hands offered life and prosperity to the royal family. These artistic representations were a significant break from traditional iconography. The Aten became a more personalized, active force in the depictions. He began to introduce subtle changes in religious practice. He favored the Aten in temple ceremonies. He funded specific Aten shrines within existing complexes. These actions, initially seen as mere preference, gradually caused unease. The Amen priesthood observed these shifts with growing apprehension. They understood the potential threat to their authority. Upon his father's death, Amenhotep IV ascended to the throne as sole pharaoh. He inherited a kingdom at its peak of prosperity. He also inherited a deeply entrenched religious system. His initial decrees focused on continuing his father's legacy of peace. However, his religious fervor for the Aten intensified. He began to challenge the traditional theological framework more openly. He asserted that the Aten was the creator god, the source of all life. This directly contradicted the established roles of other major deities. He proclaimed the Aten as the only god worthy of worship. He elevated himself and his queen, Nefertiti, as the only intermediaries to this divine power. Nefertiti was a queen of legendary beauty and influence. This theological revolution escalated quickly. Amenhotep IV undertook an unprecedented and dramatic move. He changed his own name from Amenhotep, meaning Amena is pleased, to Ak, meaning effective for the Aten. This public declaration signified a complete break with the past. It was a direct challenge to the powerful Amen cult. He ordered the defacement of Amen's name and images throughout Egypt. Scribes were sent to chisel out Amen's hieroglyphs from temples and monuments. This act was considered an anathema. It was an assault on the very concept of divine order. The names of other gods were also targeted, though less systematically. He also dismantled the Amun priesthood's vast holdings. He diverted their immense wealth to his new Aten cult. This move impoverished the powerful priests. It enriched the royal treasury. Akhenaten declared the Aten not merely a god, but the asterisk. Only asterisk. This marked the world's first known experiment with monotheism. He composed hymns celebrating the Aten's universal power and benevolence. The Great Hymn to the Aten is a profound piece of religious poetry. It describes the Aten as the sole creator and sustainer of life. He promoted a more personal and direct form of worship. It emphasized natural light and open-air ceremonies. This was in stark contrast to the dark, mysterious inner sanctums of traditional temples. He saw the Aten as immanent in creation. To further solidify his new religion, Akhenaten made an even more radical decision. He moved the capital city from Wesa, the ancient heart of Amen worship. He founded an entirely new city dedicated solely to the Aten. This new city was named Akhenaten, meaning horizon of the Aten. Today, it is known as Amon. He personally chose its remote, uninhabited location. The site was carefully selected for its pristine landscape. It was a virgin land, untouched by previous cults. He envisioned it as a pure city for his pure god. The construction began immediately. Thousands of laborers, artisans, and officials were relocated. They built temples, palaces, and residential areas from scratch. The city was built with remarkable speed. It featured open-air temples designed to let in the sun's rays. Akhenaten was unlike any previous Egyptian city. Its architecture was innovative, emphasizing light and spaciousness. The palaces were grand, adorned with vibrant frescoes depicting the royal family. These frescoes showed intimate, naturalistic scenes. Akhenaten and Nefertiti were often portrayed with their daughters. They embraced, kissed, and played with their children. This was a striking departure from the rigid, formal art of previous dynasties. The Amarna style emphasized fluid lines, elongated figures, and emotional expression. It sought to capture a fleeting moment rather than an eternal ideal. Artists were encouraged to observe the natural world. They depicted plants, animals, and landscapes with new realism. The royal family, Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and their 6 daughters, were central to the Aten cult. They were the only ones who could directly commune with the Aten. The people worshipped the Aten through the Pharaoh. They offered prayers to the royal family. This system further cemented Akhenaten's absolute authority. He was both king and high priest of the new religion. Nefertiti also held an unprecedented position of power. She was depicted in kingly regalia. She sometimes took on ceremonial roles typically reserved for male pharaohs. Her image was almost as prominent as However, this radical transformation was met with considerable resistance. The Amun priesthood, dispossessed and disgraced, harbored deep resentment. They mourned the loss of their power and wealth. The populace, accustomed to a rich pantheon of gods, struggled to accept the exclusive worship of the Aten. Many common people continued to worship their traditional deities in secret. They clung to the familiar gods who protected their families and livelihoods. The traditional funerary beliefs, centered around Osiris and the weighing of the heart, were also challenged. The Aten cult offered no clear afterlife for commoners. This caused widespread anxiety and fear. The administrative machinery of the kingdom also suffered. Akhenaten became increasingly absorbed in his religious revolution. He neglected affairs of state. His focus was almost solely on the Aten. and Akut. Foreign policy, once robust under Amenhotep III, began to unravel. The Amarna letters, a collection of diplomatic correspondence, reveal a decline in Egyptian influence. Vassal states pleaded for help against encroaching enemies. They often received no response from the Hittites continued their expansion. They threatened Egyptian holdings in the Levant. Internal stability also eroded. The sudden shift in religious practices caused widespread social dislocation. Many people felt alienated from their king. The traditional festival cycles, so vital to Egyptian life, were disrupted. The scribes, once copying wisdom texts, found their traditional roles undermined. The artisans, forced to adopt the new Amarna style, sometimes struggled with the radical shift. Some artists resisted the new aesthetic. Others embraced it with innovative zeal. Akhenaten's health deteriorated during his reign. His physical appearance, as depicted in Amarna art, was unusual. He had an elongated head, a prominent belly, and wide hips. Scholars debate whether these depictions were accurate or stylized. Some suggest he suffered from a genetic condition like Marfan syndrome. Others believe the exaggerated features were symbolic. They represented the Otan's creation of a new human form. He became more withdrawn, consumed by his singular vision. The queen, Nefertiti, remained a powerful force by his side. Her name means the beautiful one has come. Her iconic bust, discovered in Amarna, showcases her striking beauty. She was instrumental in establishing the Aton cult. She maintained the public image of the royal family. Some evidence suggests she may have even served as Kharij. She may have even ruled briefly as a pharaoh herself under a different name. Her fate after Akhenaten's later years remains a mystery. As Akhenaten's reign progressed, the initial idealism of Akhetaten began to fade. The city became more isolated. It was disconnected from the realities of the wider empire. The economic situation, while initially supported by diverted Amun wealth, grew precarious. The massive cost of building a new capital was a heavy burden. The constant defacement of traditional gods caused deep societal wounds. It alienated many loyal subjects. The traditional order, once a source of comfort and stability, had been shattered. Akhenaten's legacy remains one of the most contentious topics in Egyptology. Was he a visionary ahead of his time? Was he a fanatical despot who nearly destroyed his kingdom? His actions were undoubtedly revolutionary. They had profound and lasting consequences. His reign, though short, dramatically altered the course of Egyptian history. It left a deep scar on the collective memory of the people. It forced a reckoning with the nature of divine power and royal authority. Towards the end of Akhenaten's reign, a mysterious figure emerged. Smenkhare, perhaps a son or younger brother, appeared as co-regent. His identity and role are still debated by scholars. Some propose he married Meratan, Akhenaten's eldest daughter. He may have attempted a reconciliation with the Amun priesthood. He potentially ruled briefly after Akhenaten's death. His reign, if indeed he ruled, was fleeting. It offered little stability. Akhenaten died after approximately 17 years on the throne. The precise circumstances of his death are unknown. His grand project, Akhetaten, was abandoned shortly after. The city was left to crumble into desert sands. It became a ghost city, a testament to a failed revolution. The return to traditional religious practices began almost immediately. The Amen priesthood quickly regained its former power. The names and images of Akhenaten were systematically erased. His monuments were dismantled. His memory was condemned. He became known as the enemy, or the criminal, in later records. The young boy who succeeded Akhenaten was Tutankhaten. He was Akhenaten's son, with a lesser queen. He was likely only about 9 years old when he ascended to the throne. His brief reign was dominated by powerful advisors. These advisors included the Vizieri and the general, Horemheb. They spearheaded the reversal of Akhenaten's reforms. Tutankhaten changed his name to Tut. This meant living image of Amen. It symbolized the full restoration of the Amen cult. His royal tomb, discovered largely intact, provided invaluable insights. It showed the immediate aftermath of the Amarna period. It also revealed the rich artistic traditions of the late 18th dynasty. The Amarna period represented a seismic shift. It was a cultural and religious upheaval, unlike any other in Egypt's long history. It ended the period of unparalleled prosperity and stability. It introduced a time of chaos and uncertainty. The silent redirection that Amenhotep III had initiated had inadvertently paved the way. It led to a period of intense ideological conflict. The subtle current of change had become a raging torrent. Tutankhamun's advisors worked diligently to restore the old order. They rebuilt the defaced temples. They reinstated the Amun priesthood. They reinstituted the traditional religious festivals. The royal court moved back to Memphis and Wasit. Akhenaten was systematically dismantled. Its stones were often reused in new construction projects. The memory of Akhenaten and his Atenkalt was to be eradicated. It was as if it never existed. However, the Amarna period left an indelible mark. The Amarna style in art, though suppressed, subtly influenced subsequent artistic developments. The emphasis on naturalism and emotional expression never completely vanished. The concept of a single, universal God, though rejected, lingered in the collective consciousness. It might have quietly influenced later philosophical developments. The very disruption highlighted the deep conservatism of Egyptian society. It showed its resistance to radical change. Tutankhamun's reign was short. He died mysteriously around age 18. His tomb, discovered by Howard Carter, became world famous. It contained an unimaginable wealth of artifacts. These treasures showed the opulence of ancient Egypt. His burial mask is one of the most iconic symbols of Egypt. His tomb provided a window into a tumultuous era. It showed a kingdom trying to recover from profound change. After Tutankhamun's death, his widow, Ankhesenemun, made an unprecedented plea. She wrote to the Hittite king. She asked him to send one of his sons to be her husband and Pharaoh of Egypt. This desperate act revealed the political instability of the time. It also showed the lack of a clear heir. Her plea was ultimately unsuccessful. The Hittite prince sent to Egypt was murdered. This likely occurred at the border. The throne eventually passed to Tutankhamun's vizier. I was an older, experienced courtier. He likely played a key role in the return to orthodoxy. His reign was brief, lasting only about 4 years. He continued the process of undoing Akhenaten's reforms. He worked to stabilize the kingdom. His tomb in the Valley of the Kings is also significant. The last pharaoh of the 18th dynasty was Horemheb. He was a powerful general under Tutankhamun and I. He eventually seized the throne, likely without direct royal lineage. He was a military man. He was determined to fully restore order and stability. He completed the eradication of the Amarna legacy. He issued new edicts reinforcing traditional religion and law. He also launched a major internal reform. He purged corrupt officials and restructured the army. He initiated extensive building projects. He reasserted Egyptian authority in foreign lands. Horemheb's reign effectively erased Akhenaten from official records. He began counting his regnal years from the death of Amenhotep III. This ignored the reigns of Akhenaten, Smenkhare, Tutankhamun, and I. He sought to create an unbroken line of succession. He connected himself directly to Amenhotep III. Horemheb, having no sons, designated his vizier Parmes as his successor. Parmes was also a military officer. He would ascend the throne as Ramesses I. This marked the beginning of the illustrious 19th dynasty. This dynasty would usher in a new era of imperial power. It would solidify the traditional religious order. The Amarna period, though short, served as a stark lesson. It showed the dangers of radical ideological change. It also demonstrated the resilience of ancient Egyptian institutions. The kingdom had survived an internal crisis. It had emerged, scarred, but intact. The events of the Amarna period highlight the delicate balance of power. It showed the intricate relationship between pharaoh, priesthood, and people. Amenhotep III's quiet redirection had inadvertently sown the seeds of this upheaval. His emphasis on internal spirituality fostered a deeper, more individualistic religious thought. This thought, when pushed to an extreme by his son, threatened to shatter the very fabric of society. The wisdom of that tranquil night, initially a source of peaceful transformation, became distorted. It turned into an ideological battleground. The restoration of order by Tutankhamun's advisors and later Horemheb was crucial. It ensured the survival of the Egyptian state. They understood the importance of tradition. They recognized the need for religious and social cohesion. The memory of Akhenaten was suppressed for centuries. It was a testament to the trauma he inflicted. His Sitya Khataten remained buried under the sands for millennia. It eventually yielded its secrets to modern archaeologists. The Amarna period offers a unique window. It shows the dynamic nature of ancient civilizations. It reveals their capacity for both radical innovation and profound conservatism. It reminds us that even the most stable societies can be shaken. They can be transformed by the vision of a single individual. The legacy of Akhenaten, though officially condemned, continues to fascinate. It challenges our understanding of religious evil. It provokes questions about power, faith, and identity. The lessons learned from this turbulent interlude were profound. Future pharaohs adopted a more cautious approach to religious reforms. They understood the perils of alienating the priesthood. They respected the deeply ingrained traditions of their people. The stability that followed the Amarna period allowed Egypt to thrive again. It entered its new kingdom zenith. This zenith included the reigns of the powerful Ramesside pharaohs. These pharaohs would build colossal temples and conquer vast territories. However, the shadow of Amarna never fully lifted. It remained a cautionary tale. It was a reminder of what happens when a pharaoh challenges the cosmic order. The restoration ensured continuity. Yet, the memory of radical change persisted. It quietly influenced how future rulers exercised their divine authority. The silent shift initiated by Amenhotep III had ultimately reached a dramatic, explosive climax. It resulted in a forced return to equilibrium. The river of Egyptian history, briefly diverted, had found its old course. Yet it flowed with new wisdom. It was forever marked by the turbulent waters it had once navigated. The events of the Amarna period also illuminate the role of individuals. A single pharaoh, driven by an intense personal belief, could attempt to reshape an entire civilization. His vision, though revolutionary, ultimately failed. It failed due to resistance from entrenched institutions and popular conservatism. The power of tradition proved stronger than the will of a single king. This demonstrated the deep roots of polytheism in Egyptian identity. The political vacuum and instability left by Akhenaten's policies had far-reaching consequences. The loss of territories in the Near East would be a persistent problem. It required future pharaohs to embark on extensive military campaigns. Ramesses II, later known as Ramesses the Great, famously battled the Hittites. He sought to restore Egypt's imperial prestige. This struggle for dominance over the Hittites defined much of the 19th dynasty. It was a direct consequence of Akhenaten's neglect of foreign affairs. The vast wealth accumulated during Amenhotep III's time was largely spent during the Amarna period. It was poured into Akhetaten and the Aten cult. This depletion of resources necessitated new economic strategies. Future pharaohs had to rebuild the kingdom's treasury. They did this through renewed trade and military conquest. The economic boom of the early 18th dynasty was not fully replicated. The religious trauma of Amarna also led to an increased emphasis on personal piety. While official worship returned to Amen and the traditional gods, individual Egyptians sought a more direct connection. They communicated with their deities through personal prayers. They made small votive offerings at local shrines. This trend of popular religion continued into later periods. It gave rise to new forms of religious expression. The artistic revolution of Amarna, despite its short lifespan, proved influential. The fluidity and naturalism of Amarna art subtly resurfaced. It influenced later periods. The Amarna whisperer can be seen in the softer lines and more expressive faces. These elements appeared in tomb paintings and sculptures of subsequent dynasties. It was a legacy that could not be completely erased. It was embedded in the collective artistic consciousness. The pharaohs of the 19th and 20th dynasties, the Ramessides, vigorously promoted the traditional gods. They especially honored Amun, Ra, and Ptah. They built massive temples dedicated to these deities. These temples, like those at Karnak and Luxor, were designed to awe. They reinforced the power of the state religion. This was a direct response to Akhenaten's challenge. It was an effort to re-establish unquestionable divine authority. The story of Akhenaten's revolution and its subsequent undoing offers powerful insights. It explores the interplay of leadership, religion, and societal change. It demonstrates how a single individual's beliefs can profoundly impact an entire nation. It also shows the extraordinary resilience of ancient Egyptian civilization. It adapted and endured, always returning to its core identity. The memory of Akhenaten remained a deep, unspoken wound. It was a period that Egyptians rarely discussed openly. It was a time of deliberate, historical amnesia,